we will start the recording now. Hopefully everybody is okay with that. And yeah, and it will be the replay will be available on the Efficient Buildings community website a bit later. So I want to start with a few words about the Efficient Buildings community. Not all of them might know it yet. It is a network of over 80 public and private stakeholders. So it includes public authorities, energy agencies, research institutions, and some business organizations as well, that have carried out 13 EU-funded projects in public buildings with a focus, and that will be the focus of today's event as well, on the Mediterranean area. So taking really into account the very specific climate, cultural, economic conditions that are really particular to that zone. So the Efficient Buildings community is all about designing, testing, scaling up solutions to improve the European public building stock. And within the community, we developed a good number of nice tools that made the renovation journey easier for public administrations. All of these tools are also available on the website. We will put the link in the chat later on. We also organized webinars, living labs, twinning activities to really build capacities in cities from Spain to Croatia. So in quite a broad geographical area. And I'm sure those tools made the job of public administrations easier, but of course, it's not just about having tools, but you also need to have the right skills. So we will see what the public authority representatives who are in the panels today will say about how available these skills are. We have until 11:30 to discuss how fit public authorities and also the professionals in the sector are. So we will also look and give voice to the supply side. We have two amazing panels, and one is more an EU panel, and the other one is the public authority and even local authority panel. So I would say I will stop here. Let's get the discussion going. I hand over to Adrian Joyce, who's director of the Renovate Europe campaign. And yeah, Adrian, over to you to set the scene and also to introduce the great speakers we have for this very first panel.
Thank you very much, Miriam. And can I start by saying it's also a great pleasure for us to be co-organizing this webinar with Energy Cities and the EFBWW on a theme that we are giving more and more emphasis to here at the EU level. And I'm convinced that this morning's exchanges will inform the audience and help us all to learn a little more about the opportunities that exist and why they need to exist, in fact, for the challenges we face ahead. And I'd like to thank my colleagues, Aphrodite Psata and Caroline Simpson, who've helped in the background to prepare our interventions here today. So for those who may not know us, the Renovate Europe campaign is a political communications campaign. We have 49 partners, including Energy Cities and EFBWW. And among those 49 partners, we have 18 national partners, which allow us to have an impact at national level, which is becoming increasingly important as time goes by. And we have champions from politics, city networks, city administrations, and businesses. But to today's discussion, I'm delighted to moderate this first panel, which will look at the topic of EU-level perspectives and opportunities on skills and training for energy renovation. And my own short introduction will just address why workforce upskilling is so important to deliver on energy renovation schemes. And at the end of my short introduction, I'll introduce the panel, and then we will hear from the speakers one after the other. I say to the audience, at any point, don't be shy, type questions into the chat box so that we can animate the the question and answer session towards the end of this panel. So why is workforce upskilling so important? Actually, it's because the European Union and all of its member states have set ambitious targets for the achievement of long-term energy and climate targets to bring the EU to being a fully carbon neutral economy by 2050. And given that buildings represent 40% of our energy consumption and 36% of our greenhouse gas emissions, we simply can't get to those long-term targets without significantly energy renovating our building stock. But in doing so, there are plenty of opportunities that exist. And a couple of years ago, we put out a report demonstrating the benefits that can come from ambitious renovation programs. And in that work, we found that for every 1 million invested in energy renovation of buildings, an average of 18 jobs are created in the EU. When you dig into those numbers, you find that, in fact, in the Mediterranean region, that number would be slightly higher, maybe around 20 jobs per million invested. And those jobs, what kind of jobs are they? Well, they are local, long-term jobs that can and will stimulate economic activity across all of the EU, because our sector is made up mostly of SMEs. However, given the scale of the challenge, we are now aware that there are bottlenecks in terms of the numbers of workforce we have in the sector and in the skill sets that they have. We have recognized that new skill sets are required as we see more digitalization of the renovation sector, more focus on off-site construction for renovation in order to increase productivity and to increase quality moving forward. So to achieve that, we've seen a need for robust accreditation systems that will ensure that the quality of the skills and training received by the workforce in the construction sector can be maintained over time. And I'm looking forward to hearing what our partner EFBWW will say on this in terms of continuous vocational education training. And in all of this, there's also a need identified by the Renovate Europe campaign to have more reliable energy performance certificates, which happily is taking place in the revision of the Buildings Directive. And that's because there's a strong move in the sector to rely more and more on energy performance certificates as a means of ensuring that performance promises are achieved in the work that we do in the market. Another action of Renovate Europe was to prepare last year the Renovate to Recover study, in which we looked at member state plans on the recovery and resilience facility and where they placed buildings. And in that, we tried to find those countries that have clear funding proposals on skills development, but we didn't find as many as we wished. In fact, more than 50% don't address the issue at all. However, we found that Croatia has a good plan to finance a framework for new jobs that will upskill the workforce to do both energy renovation and post-earthquake reconstruction and stabilization of buildings. We found that Romania has a plan to create specialized university courses and certification schemes focused on energy renovation. And Ireland, although not in the Mediterranean region, has a good green skills action program, which is focused more broadly on the low carbon economy. So there are some good practices at national level that we can point to. And I look forward to hearing from the more city and regional level later in the second panel, what's happening on the ground. And just to end my few words of introduction, under the recent, as a result of the recent tragedy and crisis in Ukraine, the European Union has, as many of you will know, issued the Repower EU strategy. And here, Renovate Europe has reacted because it focuses a great deal on supply side and not enough on demand reduction. And on training, we have come forward with some suggestions to the European Commission on what we call a renovation sector compact, which would be a collaboration between private industry players and public sector players to map existing and potential capacity, addressing bottlenecks in the energy renovation market, its workforce and supply chains. So each person in the compact taking responsibility for their segment of the value chain. We've put forward an idea. It's more of a concept that maybe the kind of summer school idea could be applied to relatively quick upskilling courses that might be able to take place at tools downtime, but that could quickly upskill a proportion of the existing workforce. And we're looking towards the multi-annual financial framework, where most operational programs and partnership agreements are still being finalized, opening an opportunity for member states and regional authorities to look more closely to skills. So these are the opening thoughts I wanted to share with you. And we will now come to our panel presentations. And each presenter will share their screen and they will run through their presentations. And we have three in my segment. I'm delighted to welcome Maeva Roulette, who's a policy officer at DG Employment, and she deals with the European Social Fund Plus and the Just Transition Fund. We have Luca Angelino, a project advisor at Cinia, who's going to talk to us about the Build Up Skills Initiative. And third, in my panel, I have Rolf Geering, who's the political secretary at the European Federation of Building and Woodworkers, looking at needs, challenges, and opportunities on upskilling construction workforce. So without further ado, over to you, Maeva, and please share your screen and pop up the presentation.
Thank you, Adrian. Yes, I will share my presentation quickly. And it should be working. Now let me do slideshow. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I participated in one of your meetings years ago in the parliament when we still had face-to-face meetings. Maybe they will come back soon, but it's lovely to continue this conversation. I have a short presentation, and then, of course, at the end of the panel, if you have questions or in the chat, don't hesitate. But yeah, to start with, I just wanted to put back a slide that we often present at the Commission, but that is essential for what we're doing now. It's the one on the European Green Deal. So as you all know, at the end of 2019, the Commission presented its new strategy for the development of Europe, and this is the European Green Deal. So everything we're doing is also geared towards the transition to a climate neutral economy by 2050. With intermediary target, of course, in 2030. And as Adrian was mentioning, part of it, of course, is linked to the renovation and of buildings because of the huge impact on energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. In 2020, at the very beginning, we also presented the investment plan for Europe, which tried to put money where our mouth is and to try to help regions and member states to support this transition. So, of course, renovation plays a key role in reducing the energy demand in the EU. We all know this. The issue that the sector is facing, and I think it's not only an issue for this sector, is that skills are changing, new skills are needed, and we don't necessarily have the people that are trained for this. So it's very important that first, of course, we anticipate what the skills needed are, and that we develop the right curricula, and that we actually train people so that they find job opportunities. Because of course, the energy sector has an enormous growth potential. So we should redirect people towards this type of sectors, but making sure that we also support them in developing their skills. So to support the member states and regions, we have a few funds notably that could be used, and I will talk a bit more about them. And I put cohesion policy, and when we talk about skills development, it would be more the European Social Fund Plus, the Just Transition Mechanism, and in particular the Just Transition Fund. And Adrian mentioned also the Recovery and Resilience Facility. So about cohesion policy, and here I would be talking more about ERDF, so the European Regional and Development Funds, and the Cohesion Fund, CF. Here they will support directly what we call the policy objective 2, which is a low carbon economy. And here the aim is really to support the EU target of reaching the energy efficiency target of 32.5% with an upwards revision close by 2023. So they really aim at promoting energy efficiency and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And they do that via several potential investments. So we could support via these funds energy efficiency renovation in public buildings or in residential buildings. Of course, given the missions of cohesion policy, we would have rather a focus on poor households when we talk about the residential buildings, because the idea is also to tackle energy poverty, which is a major issue, especially now in light of the Ukrainian crisis, where energy prices are risen dramatically. So we really need to help people to support them so that they can pay their bill and then can adapt their houses so that the energy bills are also lower. There is also the possibility to support energy efficiency in SMEs, so to help them either as part of another project where they also invest in the new type of equipment, but making sure that then they do not lose energy. And we also invest in energy efficiency improvement of the district heating network so that it also have an impact on energy efficiency. But I would say this would be more for hard investment, so investment in the building themselves and less so about the skills. When we talk about skills, we talk more about the European Social Fund, which is the main EU fund to invest in people, notably via upskilling and reskilling and the support to the development of new curricula. So this fund, and together with the other cohesion policy funds, are done in what we call shared management, which means that at the beginning of a 7-year programming period, the Commission and the member state or region define what are the priorities. And then the member state or the region are in charge of implementing the fund, and the Commission, of course, follows the implementation, but we are not the one launching the call, selecting the project, etc. And so in terms of shared management, we have nearly 100 billion euros for the period 2021-27. And as Adrian also said, for the new programming period, which is 21-27, we are at the moment still negotiating what we call the partnership agreement, which are really the big framework for the member states, as well as the program which define more the priorities in the country or the region, depending on how the member state has decided to implement the funds. So of course, under the ESF Plus, in the proposal of the Commission, but which is still there in the regulation that has been adopted by the co-legislator, there is this idea that we should focus on green and digital skills. And I think Adrian also mentioned it, that for the renovation sector, digital skills are one of the key challenges because the jobs are changing. And now a lot of things that were done manually or on site are done on the computer, and people who have not been taught this need to be taught so that they can efficiently contribute, but they can also keep their jobs. Because the idea of the European Social Fund is to really secure the employment pathway of people or help them to find new opportunities. So for example, we could consider supporting unemployed people to develop these skills because there is a big growth potential, and to also make sure that people don't fall into poverty. Because of course, if a person is not upskilled or reskilled, they are at risk of losing their job and then at risk of falling into poverty. So it's very important that we look, of course, at it from the green perspective, that this is essential that we develop the skills so that we're able to do this renovation. But we also need to look at it from a human perspective, which is that we need to make sure that these people either keep their job or find a new and better job and are not left behind. I think in the Commission, this is also our motto, that we want to do the transition. This is our target and we're very serious about this, but we don't want it to be at the cost of people's lives. So as I was mentioning before, one of the key challenges is really skills anticipation when it comes to new jobs or the green sector. So we really need to identify which skills will be needed, because sometimes it takes time to upskill and reskill. It's not only a 6 month training course, it can be also, we might need, for example, to redefine completely curricula in technical schools or at university, so that the students, when they finish their education, are ready for the labor market. And this could take several years. So we really need to think about this so that we adapt every aspect, and not only, I would say, the education of adults or already employed people. And this is possible under the ESF+. We also have a new fund that was proposed beginning of 2020. Yes, Adrian. I have 2 minutes left, sorry, that was the sign. I thought there was a question. So it's really a focus on economic diversification and upskilling and reskilling, but compared to the ESF+, which is very vague, it's really about addressing the negative impacts of the transition. So it's not only about developing and having growth potential, etc. It's really making sure that we tackle the negative impacts. So we can talk about it later, but also the JTF is only in some regions, while the ESF+ is across the EU. So there are some opportunities, maybe a bit less so than the ESF+. And finally, yes, we are in the middle of the negotiations. So it's really the time to get in contact with your managing authorities, which are the ones who will launch project, to see how your project could be financed under the funds. And finally, I had a slide on the recovery and resilience facility, but really it's to say that the Commission had said that it was possible to look at this kind of project and finance them. But as Adrian said, it is limited the uptake, but it doesn't mean that it will not be financed just under other funds. So I will stop there, but really encourage you to get in contact with your managing authorities so that you can really know what are the opportunities in your region. And I hope that I finish within 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maeve, for that interesting presentation showing the opportunities that exist for funding. And sorry to pressure you, but time is our enemy this morning. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Luca Angelino. Luca is a policy officer at CIMIA. And Luca, I think we've asked you just for a few minutes on build-up skills. So over to you. And could DeMarcus mute, please? There's a person called DeMarcus who is speaking. Or can the organizers mute him or her? Go ahead, Luca.
Yes, good morning, and thank you very much indeed for the invitation. Can you hear me and see my slides?
Yes, we can hear you, but there are a couple of windows open over the slides, but they're visible enough.
To minimize them.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you so much. Complementary to what was already presented by my colleague, I'm going to introduce to you the Build Up Skills Initiative. So managed by CINEA and previously by DIASMA. So let me give you first some policy background as well. I'm sure you're all very well familiar with the renovation wave strategy unveiled back in October 2020, and whose main objective is to double the renovation rate in Europe. The strategy and the Commission is very clear about the link between upskilling and the targets in terms of buildings to achieve by 2030 by double the renovation rate, and to achieve by mid-century the full decarbonization of the building sector. There is a need to transform the workers and the job market in the construction sector towards green and more circular skills. There is a need, according to this communication, to really create new job profiles, specialists, for example, in building renovation, installers for advanced technological solutions, or, for instance, BIM managers. Also, there is a link between the role of the construction sector and as ambassadors for renovation, a key role in offering the latest technological solutions and in really triggering more renovation on the ground. The Commission, with that communication, also highlights a number of initiatives and work with member states. Many were already highlighted before. I'm going really to introduce you to the Build Up Skills initiative, which is now run by my agency under the LIFE program. Build Up Skills was launched back in 2011 and was funded through 3 different programs. Firstly, the Intelligent Energy Europe. It continued under Horizon 2020, and it's now funded under the Clean Energy Transition sub-program of the LIFE program. 3 are the main focus areas: skills for deep renovation and nearly zero energy buildings, digitalization, and measures to boost not only supply, but also the demand for skills and skilled professionals. 3 are the main target groups, as you can see: building professionals and companies, public authorities, but also owners and tenants of buildings. So far, we have funded 77 projects, and this bores the total of 49 million euros since 2011. The journey since the beginning. There was a first phase run under Intelligent Energy Europe, where we really focused on bringing together the main stakeholders, initiated 30 national stakeholder platforms, working on national skills gap analysis and national roadmaps for upskilling the construction sector up to 2020. So we had at the time 30 national stakeholders platform initiated, which identified the main priorities and the pathway towards really making the professionals and the workers in the different national member states and contexts in line with the objectives. At that time, it was a paradox. I'm going already to reply to one of the questions. There was no major need for additional workers at the time. So you can see how things change over time. But there was more the need to upskill the current at the time workforce, about 3 million workers in new technologies, including energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. So based on these 30 national roadmaps, in the second phase, so running from 2012 to 2013, we funded the first national projects, really aiming to, based on the main highlights of the roadmaps, working to upgrade the existing qualification for workers, running the first training schemes and especially train the trainer schemes. And also at that level, there was a specific focus on the recognition of skilled professionals. So working on certification, labeling, databases of skilled professionals. In that phase, we trained more than 8,000 people for 805 training courses developed and more than 27,000 hours taught. With the third phase run under Horizon 2020, we opened up to multi-country projects working again on training, certification, qualification schemes. But in the latest phase, so the latest work stream, we really focused not only on the supply, but also on boosting demand. So measures to link skilled professionals with public procurement, with financing schemes, with campaigns to inform people on the ground on the importance of skills. Many projects are still ongoing, and I invite you to visit our website where you can find information, also link up with those professionals working on the ground. With the newest phase under life, we have realized, also thanks to our stakeholders, the need to really go back to the beginning and to update the initial strategies, taking into account the major developments which have been already highlighted, major development and changes in the sector, and also to align the national context and the pathways at the national level with the new objectives up to 2030. So there is now a stronger focus on green skills, on digitalization, on circular skills, but also there is a new emphasis also on making the sector more attractive for young talents and for women, as well as to reconvert workers from the fossil fuel regions and sectors. So we expect now new national roadmaps to be initiated, starting from status quo analysis. These new projects on the national level will begin, are expected to begin in the next fall, and next year we will be able to unveil the new status quo analysis, the new skills gap analysis, and the national roadmaps until 2030.
Luca,
That
could
being
you
said,
come to the wrap up, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we expect in terms of results in the new multi-annual financial framework, which is going to be financed under the LIFE program, we expect new and updated qualification frameworks and curricula, more mutual recognition, innovative toolbox to be unveiled for both blue collars and white collars, training more professionals for all EQF in Europe, with the objective to train 25,000 workers, so to increase the demand for skilled professionals. And as I said, we expect new roadmaps so that the national level can really work and have a clear pathway on how upskilling can actually take place. And these, of course, will also contribute to a number of policy dossiers and policy documents, including the national long-term renovation strategies. There are funding opportunities. I would just like to conclude by saying that we are about to publish the Call 2022 under the LIFE Clean Energy Transition, expected towards the end of May. And you are all invited to join the info days from the 18th to the 20th of May, and the 20th will be dedicated to a clean energy transition, where you can also find out about more upcoming funding opportunities in that regard. So thanks for your attention.
Luca, thank you so much, and thank you for reacting so well to my 2-minute warning. I'm now delighted to invite Rolf Gehring from our partner EFBWW to take the floor and to present. And Rolf, you've already heard quite a lot, but you're, I would say, closer to the workforce than we are. So very interested to hear your presentation. So over to you to share your screen and speak to us. And you are muted.
I'm unmuted now.
Perfect.
Okay, and I can't share the screen as long as others. But
it should be okay now. If not, I can share my screen and put up your presentation.
I would prefer doing it on my own.
So the share button is at the bottom in the center. Is it not working?
It should, so.
Oh, I have send items. Give me a second, please.
Yep.
Renovate Europe, Rolf Gehring.
While you're searching, Ralph, I would just make a comment that I see a very good conversation is going on in the chat with some questions coming and going. And that's exactly the kind of interaction that we were hoping for. So please keep that up. And I would react to one of the first questions saying, asking who are the responsible people for looking out for the needs for training and so on. And indeed, industry have a role to play, and they are taking that seriously. Rolf, we now see your screen, so just going into the presentation mode, yes, and if you can click that, then we should be fine.
Okay, you can see it. Okay, yes. So thank you very much for organizing this event. In fact, I think the two previous presentations already touched a lot of aspects I should talk about, especially Luca, but also Maeva and you yourself, Adrian. I have a preliminary remark, and then I touch this first slide and a second slide, but not all, to keep the timing. I think we are running a bit out of time. I think if we consider the whole aspect with a systemical view, then we can say on the European level, we have a lot of activities, we have programs, we have also the funding opportunities. The interesting question is how we connect the European level and all our activities with the national, sectorial, local levels and their needs and their conditions. And I will talk about the conditions. So here, the first slide is one aspect. So vocational training in the stress field of an individual right, the work organization and technology. You could take another perspective, talking about the vocational training and legal conditions and so on. But here, this triangle is focusing on the workplace. We have technological development, but this technological development is not an entity in itself. It is a process which also has a social dimension. To give you one example, if I develop a tool, let's say a screen in a bigger machinery, the screen can be ergonomic or not. And that makes a difference at the workplace. That means what we need at the workplace need to be known by designers from the beginning of the process of designing technology. Then the work organization, very important. And that is another aspect where we have, let's say, the opportunity to go this or that direction. We can have a work organization with a strong work division or with more complementary or complex tasks. And that is something which is also decided at the workplace. And finally, those decisions, they also decide about the needed skills. So new skills is not something which is just an effect of an abstract design of technology, but depends on many social decisions. That is very important for social dialogue, for employers and workers, for designers, but also for policymakers. But then we should not forget that vocational training is an individual right, and we have, that is an historic progress, I would say, the right to quit a job. So we have to have a look on the labor market. People are able to leave the sector. And that is something Luca was pointing on. We need to do something to attract young people. That guides me to the more specific level, which has not touched up until now. And that is the labor market itself. The construction sector is not very attractive in the view of young people. The construction sector is a laboratory for new forms of employment, and often it is precarious employment. We see these working conditions which are not very favorable for workers. And additionally, the construction sector is still sector with a lot of arduous work and with a relatively high number of occupational diseases and accidents compared with other sectors. So when talking about the perspectives of Renovate Europe, then we also need to have a look on working conditions. Working conditions and the labor market is also important for the, and that's the next level, for the, let's say, the framework conditions of training. We talk about the Mediterranean area, and the Mediterranean area that came out from one of our projects, the Wet for Leg project, has a diverse structure of vocational education and training. So that means we don't have a curricula which is defined in a centralized way, as for example in Germany or partly in Belgium, but it is more local initiatives we face. So, and that guides to the expectations towards authorities. Authorities on local level need to get in touch with the structures which provide training. I move now to a second slide, and that is already the last one. When talking about the more specific implications of training, we see various levels. One is the occupational interfaces. That means with new materials, with new systems, heating systems, for example, or solar panels, and a number of other aspects, we have the interference between jobs which are traditionally different. That is a challenge. One remark towards the European Commission. The European Commission has a tendency to talk about upskilling and reskilling always in one sentence. I think we should be a bit more careful. Reskilling is more a concept for those areas, maybe sectors, which disappear. The mining sector, all the workers who were employed in the mining sector, they left the sector and they had to be reskilled for a completely different job. In our sector will not disappear, it evolves, and we have these interfaces. We have now again more use of wood in construction. Very interesting, very good in terms of energy efficiency, but it needs skills which are, let's say, coming from another sector. Then communication and coordination, that is because of changes in the work organization. So BIM as a module to run construction activities is changing a lot of in terms of communication, but also work organization. Project management abilities is also a question. And then I come to the more specific aspects of not reskilling, of upskilling. And that is in fact that we have regarding zero energy buildings, a lot of new techniques. And we also have the combination of materials, or new combination of materials. That is the combination of concrete with wood. We don't need any longer screws to connect them. We have glues doing that. We also have all these prefabricated construction elements, which is a very interesting development. So the prefabrication is partly wood, but also concrete, and that is taken out from the pure construction activity and is in stationary workplaces that has advantages for the workers, but at the site you need also specific skills to deal with that. We also face the use of cobots or robots. One example is in the scaffolding sector. The South Danish University has applied for a Horizon project where they develop cobots for the erection of, or the building of scaffoldings, but also when using scaffolding. So that means facade renovation in the future in the near future will be partly done by cobots. That is an extreme change in the work of those employees who have done the facade renovation beforehand. So I come back to that. That is a bit the more specific skills, and I like to draw your attention to two projects we have run, respectively run. One is the VET for LEC project, where we had 10 countries involved, and that was a research on 3 levels. One level was we compared the vocational training systems. Then we had an in-depth view on what does low energy construction means. And the third part is examples, how the sector, the construction sector, training institutes are dealing with the problem currently. And there are a lot of good examples. Second project is a so-called blueprint project. And that is something we run under Erasmus Plus, with a lot of institutions and social partner organizations. And there we work out curricula for all the various aspects of interest for construction professions. Last 2 sentences, the framework conditions are extremely important. And here I come back first to the labor market. So we have to make the sector more attractive, not only for young talents, we have to make the sector also more attractive for those who are in it, to keep them, to retain them in the sector. And that means that companies needs to think about career paths in the sector. Another that's the last aspect I like to raise, that is a mutual recognition of qualifications. So we have to work on this without lowering the standards. Maybe the other way around. When talking about mutual recognition of qualifications, we should in parallel also always have an evaluation, a check, and some action to higher the standards of qualification. So that's all for the moment, but I appreciate, of course, if we can discuss aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ralph. That was a really fascinating view from your perspective on this question. And I think you've really hit a lot of the high points that we had hoped to cover in the discussion. I'm afraid I found myself right up against the time that was allocated to my panel. But I do have a question. I want to go back to Maeva and ask if you already have a picture from the Mediterranean region of which member states are doing well in picking up the funding opportunities, and have any recently introduced good training projects. I think that might be interesting, projects in line with the kind of skills gaps and reskilling and upskilling that we've heard from Ralph. Maeva.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, all the programs are a bit late and have not started. So we've just adopted the first one. So in terms of partnership agreement, we have approved only the German and Lithuanian one, and we have some German programs approved. In the Mediterranean, they're really not there yet. I know that in terms of green projects, there are a lot of very good ones in Spain. Italy is also investing quite a bit in it at the moment. I don't know if they're specialized in in the energy, in the construction sector or not, but I would suspect that it's quite broad. But apart from that, I've not seen that many. Also, it's shared management. So at the level of the Commission, we do not have all the details, unfortunately. So it's a bit on the basis of good projects that are sent to us that we see. I know that also for the upcoming programming period, several member states will want to look into investment in green vocational education and training, and to create really vet schools for that. So I think Cyprus is planning to do this, but in the Mediterranean specifically, I've not seen yet.
Okay.
Not the most helpful.
Okay, Maeva, that's still an indication, and that's important. We know there's an opportunity, and so Mediterranean countries can now, in this negotiation period, introduce those programs. Luca, can I come to you for a quick question? I was struck by the history of the Build Up Skills initiative and a little taken aback, I would say, by the relatively small sums of money that were invested, just 49 million euro. It seems like a small sum compared to the challenge. And is it expected that in the next phase that the funding will be significantly increased? I seem to remember that Maeva pointed out to nearly 100, was it you, that nearly 100 billion euro might be available in the social fund, but how much of it flows towards this area? Do you have any insights to share?
So we don't expect funding to increase dramatically. The idea really for us is to help finance and put in place the structures at the very beginning, innovative tools, innovative trainings that should be able either to, at a later stage, to find alternative sources of finance or to run independently. So the idea is really to help put in place, to help give guidance, for example, with the upcoming revision of the roadmap. So on the national level, the idea is to give a clear pathway, and then other funding sources can be utilized to implement those measures identified at that level. So this is what we can do with our limited budget. But we hope, of course, and we work with our stakeholders to make things as useful as possible.
Okay, thanks, Luca. And Ralph, I have a question for you that's related to a question that was in the chat, where a participant has asked whether industry has a role to play in this whole training and skills question. My own answer was yes, but I wonder, what's your feeling about the chances for fruitful cooperation across different segments of the value chain? I mean, between construction companies themselves, industry, universities that you've mentioned, and even public authorities. The kind of, I mean, our notion of a sector compact. Could you maybe react to that concept?
Yeah. Briefly, but preliminary remark, my mentioning of the project of the South Danish University, that is correct. Unfortunately, the project has been rejected by the European Commission, and the people involved it is universities, institutes, producer of scaffoldings, and the most advanced producer, and then also social partners. Because the idea was to talk from the beginning about the needs when developing this technology. I call it social needs, and the impact on needed skills and so on. So Christian Schlette is a person who is responsible, and probably he is will appreciate to communicate on that. To your question, Adrian, I mean that is the crucial point, or two things. In a knowledge society, in a society where the knowledge is differentiated and you have more and more subsystems which have to communicate with each other and to coordinate activities, it is absolutely crucial that we have on board the social partners, but in the same at the same time also training providers, science, and the authorities. So we have not a sector skills council on European level, but that is a bit the way we should go, where we coordinate those activities. In the furniture sector, is not now construction, but also an important sector. We will have we implement it on the European level. So from my point of view, it is absolutely crucial, and I really can advise you to check the blueprint project and the outcome from the blueprint project. That is also the try to have on board the various stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition, it is really important that we every time see what are the history in a country regarding vocational education, because that gives us a frame in which we have to act. There is no one-fits-all concept we can develop on the European level. And what we should be careful with, I think, is giving the impression that everything changed and everything is new. So there is a slight tendency with the European Commission, and not only the Commission, maybe also us, that we say, oh, now we have a project, we go for, and everything will change. No, construction workers are already trained with insulation activities. The change is more punctual, with a new glue, with a new type of insulation material, wood-based and so on, with a new heating system, but they know heating systems. So that is also sometimes a bit overcharging people, saying you have to learn everything new. That's not true.
Okay, no, very interesting reflections. Thank you, Rolf. So I'll draw this panel to a close and hand back to Miriam at Energy Cities. And thank you to Maeva, Luca, and Rolf. Very stimulating presentations. Thank you. Miriam, over to you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Adrian, and thanks to all the previous speakers. It was really interesting and exciting to hear how you assess the current situation and what type of solutions or support mechanisms are being put in place. So now let's zoom into some particular Mediterranean countries and see how this is going on the ground. I'm delighted to have with me 3 experts who know very well about the situation in public administrations. And we all know that public administrations are kind of at the forefront of this renovation wave that we need to surf on. They are meant to be exemplary institutions. Yeah, it's important that they have the skills both internally and the skills from the supply side to really carry out this task in a proper way. So I'm happy to introduce now the 3 speakers that we have with us today. If you could all, I see that Belinda and yes, great, you all put your camera on. So first of all, Belinda Gottardi, welcome Belinda. She's mayor of Castello Maggiore in Italy, and she's also member of the EU Covenant of Mayors Board, as her town is one of the many thousand signatories of the Covenant of Mayors. And Belinda is also climate spokesperson of the Committee of European Municipalities and Regions. So I think that's really a perfect link between the local and the EU level. I'm happy that you're here. Then we have Evangelos Evangelides, who's mayor of the city of Aradipu in the lovely island of Cyprus. He's mayor since 2011 already, so has already been re-elected. And he's one driver of his city's smart city strategy. And Evangelos is also member of Energy Cities Board of Directors. Then the third expert that we have there, he's having more of a national eye on things. It's Helder Gonçalves, director of the Portuguese National Energy Laboratory, LNGE. And Helder is also national coordinator of the Build Upskills 4C. So I think we will be able to make a link with what Luca presented and see how that works in a specific country. So now my first question to the 3 of you is actually just a reaction to what you've heard previously. So how do the EU funding opportunities that exist or that are being put in place, especially the ESF Plus, for example, how do they resonate with your reality on the ground? Maybe let's start with you, Belinda. You certainly listened with both your local authority ear and also with this in your role as in the Covenant of Mayors. Do you think these support mechanisms are fit to support cities all over Europe in their challenge for better and faster renovating buildings?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And first of all, sorry for my English. I'll do my best to express myself. As you said, I'm a member of the Covenant of Mayor. I am in CMR, but I am also and especially the mayor of a town with 19,000 inhabitants, that it's quite small, but is one of the biggest in the metropolitan area of Bologna. So my perspective is the one of a mayor of a small town with a really few person working with me. So it is everything very interesting, and it's clear that in this moment in Europe, in Italy, there are many opportunities for us. But when I think about my reality, the reality of my municipality, I feel really scared, and it's like an utopia. It's like utopistic for me to reach these funds and catch this opportunity, because I need skills, many skills, because we need technical skills, but also economical skills. And many of the funds, to reach many of the funds, we needed also to develop, for example, specific things like citizen participation. So the skills are plenty, and in my municipality I don't have that skills. So another example, in metropolitan area of Bologna, where I am, there are 1 million inhabitants. 400,000 of these inhabitants live in Bologna, so the capital city of the metropolitan area. And that means that most of the citizens are in smaller town, and the smaller town doesn't have the skill to capture, to have these funds, usually, normally. So the problem is that when there are consultation, discussion, the big cities are listened, and the big cities participate to the tables in which these funds are decided. So what could happen, and usually happens, is that the funds are goes in the big cities. And we know that if most of the citizens are in small cities, we can't reach the targets if we don't take care about these aspects. So really interesting, really beautiful. This is a great opportunity, but often I don't have staff and skills to reach this opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Belinda. I hear a bit of frustration around money not being channeled to the smaller or medium-sized cities, and the like bonus that bigger cities get in accessing funding. Maybe Maeva can also a bit later on react to that and say a word on whether there are specific opportunities for cities that are not part of those bigger and major cities. Now, maybe Evangelos, you can say a word on how that feels and how you live this in your everyday work in Aradipu. Did you and do you use those funds, and how do they help you tackle the renovation challenges in your place?
Okay, good morning from Cyprus. I'd like to congratulate everybody who organized this panel, and thank you. And I think it's time to meet in Brussels, because we are becoming unsocialized after 2 years. Okay, I'll tell you what's going on in Cyprus actually. The national requirements are aligned with the minimum requirements set by the European Union, which is to renovate annually 3% of the total area of the public buildings. While we currently see lots of activities in this area, I cannot precisely say if the current goals are sufficient or not, but in terms of available financing, as also in terms of the milestones achieved and timeline. I think we do need to have a detailed and precise plan at national, regional, and local level. We need to identify each single public building and associated in the budget energy class goals and timeline in implementation of energy efficiency measures with this time horizon until 2030. We have been suggesting an energy passport for homeowners. Why not adopt similar actions for public buildings becoming a paradigm to citizens? Lately, if we get in a granting in Cyprus, lately the government announced a program for 9 million for the local buildings and the public buildings. That means that we can apply and get a grant of 700,000, which is, I think it's enough for us, but we have to apply for this process and we see the results. And also they announced a program of 40 million for a small business and non-profit organization. So this movement of the government, I think we cover us a lot as to start with it for our meetings.
Thanks, Evangelos. Normally, I think you are mentioning the need for a precise plan. Normally, the national long-term renovation strategies are meant to provide this time of this sort of timeline where national, regional, and local renovation targets are kind of aligned with each other. I don't know where this long-term strategy is at in Cyprus. Probably it's still under preparation, but indeed it's important to align all these. Helda, to you now. You're having more the national perspective, and I wanted to know from you what is your experience, especially with the Build Up Skills initiative. You've been very actively involved in it, so I think you can kind of witness of how this translates on the ground.
Yes,
we heard previously what it is in theory, and it's interesting to hear how let's say a practitioner like you is using that really together with other institutions.
Thank you very much, Miriam. It's a pleasure to be with you. Well, on my view, and let me start with the skills and build up skills, which in fact it was and it is still is a community which, as Luca said, since 10 years ago is developing a very important paper in all the member states. Because as Luca said, and someone was asking, each member state participating in the project, they look very careful to the gaps, and they defined national roadmaps on the needs on the workforce and for which type of actions should focus. And this is a very important element to each country, and especially I will say to the Mediterranean countries. So my view, and I've been involved in with many countries, and on my perspective, all the countries, including the Mediterranean countries, they really develop the needs and the roadmaps in order to implement the goals we are facing now in reality. And Build Up Skill has been a terrific program for that. The point now is a little bit different. We are now facing how to do it. And I understand very well the colleagues from Italy and Cyprus, because from the skills to the implementations, there are something in the middle, which, and I think every government, national, regional, or the mayors, they are in a hurry. They are in a hurry to build up at the local level the projects that they have in mind, that they want to go with the project. And sometimes we spend a lot of time on the discussion about, it's a very slow discussion, the national and legal framework regarding nation qualifications. It's a long process, and sometimes they do not fit with the need for urgency. And that's a very important point in all this stuff. But from Italy, Spain, Greece, Cyprus, I found schemes, skills which has been developed. In the previous panel, there were some doubts about that. I don't have doubts. I know those countries, they developed skills very specific, having in mind the needs of each country, or about building envelope, or new glazing, or insulated, or heating and cooling systems, renewables on PV or thermal. I think that's not the problem. The problem is, as I said before, we have to speed up on that. I have a comment which I think it's very important for the Mediterranean area, and my colleagues from Italy and Cyprus, they understand better than I in Portugal. And this is very different from all Europe, because the Mediterranean is overeating. Mediterranean is overeating. Our cities, all the cities in the Mediterranean, are facing, in the last 10 years, a huge amount of heat waves. Heat waves show the cities and the projects on cities is not only about buildings, is about the urban as a whole. So the adaptation of the for the sustainable communities, or greening the communities, should be seen as a neighborhood. At least we need to green our cities in the Mediterranean. It's not only about buildings or about NZAP, in order to fit some of the goals of these goals which are in EPPD, or no, there are definitely specific situations in Mediterranean area. So that's what I most important I would like to say at this moment now, Miriam.
Thanks a lot, Helder, and thanks for reminding the urgency to renovate quickly. That's also why we organize this type of event, and that's why this whole efficient buildings community has come to life. And as I said previously, we developed a number of tools which kind of provide neutral and unbiased advice to local authorities who want to speed up their renovation rate. Most of the tools are around planning and managing your energy buildings performance, how you kind of do an inventory of your buildings, how you prioritize different renovation measures, how much would that cost, and which ones are, well, the most affordable and cost efficient. And I really invite local authorities who might be here in the room with us to check out those tools, which most of them are available in different languages. And I think if we can already stop reinventing the wheel and using what already exists, we might save some time and yeah, respect this urgency that is there. And actually, I want to pick one question that came from the audience, which was directed to Belinda, I think, but I think we can also put that one to Evangelos right afterwards, which is around your very specific climate and let's say energy and renovation objectives that you have locally. So first of all, Belinda, in Castello Maggiore, what are your targets and how do you think you can reach them?
As Miriam mentioned, I am a member of, my municipality joined the Covenant of Mayors. When you join the Covenant of Mayors, you need in 2 years to approve, to realize a sustainable energy and climate action plan. And it is a plan that first makes an analysis of the situation of your buildings, and it analyzes how much you cost on energy, and finds a series of interventions that you can do to improve your energy efficiency. So I have a plan, and in this plan it's written everything I can and have to do to improve my energy efficiency. So now we approve the plan, we made the analysis, and now we are working on our buildings. I'm quite lucky because I am receiving some funds. For example, we in Italy now are working with the National Recovery Plan, and the recovery plan gives money for energy efficiency, and we are asking funds to make improvements in our buildings. We use external professional because we don't have the skill, as I said, in my municipality. For example, my action plan has been realized from external professionals. So with the society that coordinates our residential building, we received 2 million euros to improve energy efficiency of 2 buildings that houses apartments for people with economical problem. And so we are working on that 2 buildings. We also win another governmental fund. It's PINQUAD, it's Projects for the Quality of Living. And we obtain another state funding and to realize co-housing buildings, and of course with the opportunity of the works for the co-housing, we are also improve energy efficiency. In other cases, we need to the energy efficiency involves the demolition of the old building to construction a new one that is up to date with the energy efficiency targets. So we are doing that, building new buildings with the public library and our middle school. So we are doing this. We have a plan, and step by step, we are trying to realize everything. This is about the buildings, but we are also working on a global service. I don't know if this word is correct in English, but it means that a society, external of course, is keeping our heating systems renewing the old ones, and building photovoltaic systems. So buildings and also heating systems.
Okay, thank you, Belinda, for making this very concrete. We're kind of running out of time, but I would still want to hear from Evangelos how the renovation objectives are in your city, and whether actually the resources and skills that you have are aligned with those ambitions. You're muted. Evangelos.
Sorry, I'm going to be very quick. As Mr. Hertel mentioned before, that we are a little slower in the Mediterranean, and I agree with him. We have our plans, but we independent from the government. So all the money that we get, we have to go through the government. So we have to wait these programs that I mentioned before to announce for the government, and then everybody's going to apply for this. And sometimes we have to get out of this program because big cities is going to be in the priority, and this happens to the small countries. But we have our program. I think the program that I mentioned before is going to satisfy us to get our goals. And also the plan I have proposed earlier aims exactly to secure this funding with a timely fashion in order to achieve the goals until 2030. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Evangelos. That is very clear. I would like to close this part of the panel just with one final question to you, Helder, which is actually because we heard that the managing authorities are still being consulted, let's say, to define how the EU money will be channeled and to which priorities should be there. I just wanted to hear from you whether you have a specific demand to your Portuguese government on how money could best be invested if we talk about skills and
definitely
public building renovation. I guess you have quite a clear idea on that.
I have a suggestion that I would say it could be applied to the South European countries. I think for a just transition, we should ask to our governments to focus on energy efficiency, on social housing. Social housing, I repeat. Third, social housing should be first, because the energy poverty is there, because it's poverty. So nobody will do nothing for the rehabilitation if not the governments. So please start with the social housing. That will allow to increase a better quality of life of those persons, and sometimes with slight interventions. You don't need even sometimes to go with the renewables and so on. But that's another discussion I will have pleasure to enter in another opportunity. But now the main is for social housing. Thank you, Miriam.
Thanks a lot. I think that aligns well with the EU's objective of leaving no one behind. And I guess it's in the interest of all of us to protect the most vulnerable people. So I thank you very much for adding the social dimension to today's discussion. I'm very sorry, I will have to close this panel now. I will hand over to Adrian for a last wrap up of those past 1.5 hours. And yeah, thanks a lot to the three of you for this nice discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. And what a reminder, an hour and a half, it went very quickly, which is always a good sign. That means it was an engaging and exciting discussion. Maybe in reflecting on what we've heard this morning, maybe looking forward a bit, I repeat that the multi-annual financial framework and its operational programs are still to be finalized, and there's a great deal of opportunity there. And here, from my Brussels perspective, we have the changes to EU legislation that are occurring at the present time that will address, for example, what Helder discussed on social housing as a priority. And we know that those changes will percolate down through the levels we've discussed today. So from the EU to the national to the city and, well, regional first and then city levels. So I found it very interesting to hear what I would call voices from the coalface, the two mayors, who really are facing the day-to-day challenge of putting into practice on the ground for the benefit of people all this kind of high-level thinking we've done at EU level and EU laws. And I guess more analysis of what's out there and more sharing of these experiences can really help inform the levels that we've discussed in this morning's exchanges. And I was still reflecting on what Rolf said, and I think he was very wise. He said, you know, change is coming. It's all around us, but it shouldn't be seen as revolutionary. I'm interpreting his words. It should be seen as evolutionary. That we need to build on experience and recognize that the value of what we have in terms of the existing workforce. And you said it, Rolf, that retention of existing workers through valuing their contribution is really as important as making our sector more attractive to new entrants. And I think that's quite a strong message this morning, because you're right, we tend to look at these challenges as if they're fresh and new, and that we should be tossing out what we've got. So maybe the lesson is we've got a great deal of experience and knowledge. The more sharing we can do in this manner, the better moving forward, because we will need more workers, we will need more skilled workers, but we need to value those we have who can themselves contribute to the renovation wave challenge. And I guess that the challenge in the Mediterranean region was, and Helder pointed it out, is exacerbated by the rapidity with which climate change is causing urban heat islands and more difficulties within our city environments. So a lot to reflect on, a lot to take away with us. And I thank once again Energy Cities and the EFBWW for co-organizing this seminar with us. And I hope you've all gained something from it. And thanks to those who participated in the lively chat, which was very active for quite a big part of the session. So thank you all once again, and enjoy the rest of the day wherever you're sitting.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Rolf.
Bye. Bye, everyone.